Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar today. Let's get started. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about me in the beginning. I've been doing this, I like to say, since the devil was a little boy. So I've been around for a while and really been in federal contracting, most of my career, which has spanned way over 20, 30 years now. And I have a background that includes business development, proposal development, contract admin, federal government procurement, and business management. And, you have the slide and you can read, the rest of it. Let's get started so we have enough time to cover everything. Okay, so the beginning of this all is just having an interest in federal contracting, okay? And the first step after you're out there marketing or when you're out there looking for work from the government agencies, you're going to be looking to bid so that you can get in the game. All right. And other than the programs that have set asides where they, give you solicitations to bid on, generally you're going to be writing proposals and trying to win work that way. And for me, the first step is actually understanding and knowing what the solicitation document is and how it's important, because that's how the government procures work, all right, by putting out solicitations. So let's look at the basic outline for a solicitation. All right. A solicitation is a request for proposal. And for the federal government, they follow an outline that's alphabetical. On the state and local basis, normally their solicitations are a numbering system, but in essence, the same information is in each kind of solicitation that you come across. Okay, so as we go through these, keep in mind that it may look a little different when you get a solicitation from state and local governments. Okay, but all of the same information is included. So let's kind of quickly review the solicitation sections. Okay, A will be the index or the table of contents that shows you what's included in the solicitation and what pages to find that information. Section B is the second section of the solicitation, where it's usually about pricing, summary of the bid pricing that you're submitting that's filled out after the pricing person finishes and you complete the proposal, and that goes in section B. That's covered more in depth in my cost proposal class that I do for Apex. Now, section C is one of the most important sections of the response, and you really must read this entirely. Okay, it's important. A lot of companies will read the synopsis and not really dive into that description of work or statement of work, and they decide to let's bid this. I've seen companies or been involved with companies that in the middle of the hallway, they read the synopsis and they're ready to go and start writing. And then once they get into that solicitation and start working, unfortunately, they find out there are some areas that they are not qualified to perform. And, this is why this section is so important, because you want to know that you have all the qualifications so that you have all your ducks in a row when you start writing your proposal. And you're not behind the dime or scrambling to get another piece of that puzzle to make your response complete, because there's no sense in starting something that you can't finish, and that you want to know that you have a good chance of winning. So read that statement of work. The entire document needs to be covered. And if you have a staff of people to help you decipher all of the requirements and make that judgment whether your company can do it alone or you need a subcontractor to help you, pull that team together so that you can review that in depth. Okay. Section D just describes how the deliverables, if any services, I'm sorry, not services, but products are being asked for, is how it should be shipped and marked and packaged. Section E is the inspection and acceptance. Well, who in the government is going to be monitoring you as you run this contract if you should win? And how are they going to review your work and accept it as being acceptable and reviewed by the government? Okay, and section G is contract administration data. Now, contract administration is the process of the monitoring of the contract activities during the performance of your contract and how your company will interact with the government to make sure your contract is in compliance within any changes that may come out, reviewing modifications to the contract. And so that's a very important area as well. But that will be in the solicitation. It'll tell you some information. And then if you should win, some of those questions that you may have about the contract administration will be answered after you're awarded the contract, like who the contracting officer will be for this contract period, who the contract specialist is, okay? The RFP, when it's originally put out, will have individuals listed on the cover page of the proposal, but that's not necessarily the individuals that would be working with you directly. So that's fully disclosed once you win the contract. Section H, Section H, special contract requirements. Okay, if there are any other requirements that are not standard contract requirements, then you'll see it under Section H. Okay, like for instance, if you were required to have security clearance, or you were asked to do something extraordinary that is not normally in a contract, then there will be special contract requirements under there. So you should review that as well. Contract clauses. It'll show you all the clauses from the Federal Acquisition Regulations, the FAR, which is, I call it the Bible of federal contracting. It'll list those clauses that are applicable to your particular contract. And in some cases, you'll see areas checked off by the government that would apply to your particular proposal or contract, okay? Section J is a list of attachments that are included in the solicitation document. And Section K is your representations, certifications, and other statements of offers and respondents. Now, I'm sure if you're interested in government contracting and you're on this webinar, you're already registered in sam.gov, where they have your registration. And in the registration, you will be filling out your reps and certs, okay, in order to be compliant with sam.gov. And you really can't do business with the government unless you're registered in sam.gov, okay? So you're gonna see this section here, and nowadays, they give you the option of checking that you're already, your sam.gov registration is complete and up to date. And that's a requirement in mostly all bids to verify, okay, one way or the other. So they'll tell you to check a certain box in the reps and certs to verify that. However, you may see other requests for specific responses like that government agency may require, okay, that you need to complete in your reps and certs. It could be just to see if you're in good standing with the government. Um, so make sure somebody is around who familiar with the SAM.gov registration and can kind of browse through the representations and certification section and verify that you're checking everything that's required. And the RFP will tell you in instructions, you know, what sections that are important that you need to include in your response. This is why one reason why it's so important to read the whole solicitation, including, you know, the instructions, section L. Now I call section L the second most important area to review when you're trying to make a decision about whether we're going to bid this thing or not. Because, you know, I've been in this business a long time and I've seen people, you know, certain oversights could cost you that contract. Okay, so you need to be very attentive and focused when you're looking over this solicitation, excuse me, and making sure that you really qualify, you can do this thing. But how soon did you get that solicitation document? Do you have enough time to bid before the due date? All of these things are in the instructions, okay? And you'll also see like when the government is open to answering questions about the solicitation document, and there's a deadline with that. So if you're not receiving this solicitation in time to complete it before the due date, then that's another consideration you might make about whether it's or not you should spend your money to do this particular proposal, okay? Um, and if you decide to go for it, make sure that you're following all of Section L requirements. This is your checklist there of things to complete that you need to put it in those proposal documents that you're going to be submitting. And if you're lacking anything, that could be grounds for the government to throw out your proposal. This is what makes it so important to know how this solicitation is organized, what to look for. And if you don't see things or you don't have, they're not providing you guidance on certain areas, make sure you do ask questions during that question and answer period, okay? So reviewing the solicitation is the first step, okay? And making sure that you're gonna be submitting a compliant proposal. And that's the key to being a winner, you know, reading it thoroughly, understanding it. So section L is the second most important area when you're making a decision to go for it, okay? Now, the third most important in my book is section M, evaluation factors for award. I think that's important because you need to look at how the government's gonna grade you on each section of the proposal that you submit. And it makes a difference, just again, to weigh how you're going to respond with how you're going to be evaluated. And I think it's a good way to review your proposal. And I encourage everybody to leave enough time to make sure you are evaluating your proposal before you submit it and that you are compliant, okay? And because again, you want to win. You're in it to win it. And you know, that's just paramount, okay? Um, so make sure that you do pay attention to section C, L, and M at a minimum when you're making that decision to go for it, to bid on this particular proposal. This is your company's lifeline, bringing in new business. And, you know, most um, marketing brings in the connections to the different agencies where you're going to hear about what's coming down the pipe, what bids are going to be released that you may be interested in. And you want to do your due diligence to be sure that your bid is of quality. You know, it's one thing to do a proposal and do it rushed and not get it in on time. And that doesn't feel good. It also doesn't feel good to not really pay attention to the instructions and the statement of work and all of that, and put a proposal out that is non-compliant. So I urge you to make sure that you at least look at C, L, and M. Okay? So let's go on. We're going to actually talk about being compliant and how to make sure that you have a compliant proposal. This is the way you can do it, is by developing or have a compliance matrix or a checklist, or you can have both, okay? So let's kind of look at that. A compliance checklist. Use compliant checklists to verify that all solicitation requirements are met and instructions are followed. A good compliance checklist is the linchpin of a compliant and responsive proposal, okay? And we do have a sample of the compliance checklist that we can send you when we send the slides today. A sound proposal checklist is essential for team writing efforts based on principles of customer focus and good organization. All right. The checklist that I recommend you using is, you know, a sample. I will send this of what I said, but it will break everything out the way the instructions dictates that it should be. And as you write, it's a good guide to make you stay on course. And then as the reviewers review your proposal, you know, then they can follow and make sure that you've answered the mail on each and every point that needs to be covered in that proposal, okay? And, you know, depending on the size of the proposal, you know, it could be a long checklist, or it could be short, depending on the requirements, okay? But I encourage you to do that because it does keep you on track. Sometimes when people are writing, they get their head in the sand and they, you know, they're so busy, you know, writing that they get off track, and maybe they'll say a little bit more than is required, or they'll say a little bit less, and that could hurt you. You want to hit that nail, make sure that you have all of those points covered. So reviews help you evaluate where you are when you start writing, and it helps you stay on track and correct it before you actually send that proposal out. If you're doing a matrix, which a lot of people use now, sometimes the government would even ask you to provide a matrix. It kind of helps the government reviewers easily look at the matrix to see if you've responded to each area in that statement of work that they asked you to respond to. It will show a list of requirements, and then in the second column, it would show a list of where you responded to that particular requirement in your proposal response. So create outline following instructions from section L. You can also add a basic outline with additional topics from section M. That's how you're going to be evaluated by the government. And incorporate topics to cover section L. I mean, I encourage you to go through every little requirement in that statement of work or in description of work in section C. Complete outlines with topics extracted from other sections of the RFP. I encourage you to include the Section L requirements, again, so that's a double check again to make sure that you're on course, okay? You're doing it the correct way. And it also, as you're writing, especially before the question and answers are due, you get a thorough review of what the requirement is. And you have a chance to ask the government questions or to get clarification on anything you don't understand. The only dumb question is the one you don't ask. Uh, if you don't understand a certain section, rather than assuming what the government is asking you, please ask a question for clarification so that you're answering the mail adequately. All right. Make sure you follow RFP instructions, that your responses mirror the numbering system that that particular agency is using. You use customers' language, but also make sure you're not plagiarizing, okay? Just make sure that you're telling the story in your own words and staying on course. You may use the government's sections as, they are stated in that solicitation, but make sure your response is your own. And resist unsolicited topics, okay? The solicitation question, the Section L is the instruction session, excuse me, that's going to tell you how many pages are required in that proposal. Your proposal will be thrown out if you exceed those number of pages, okay? So make sure, you're answering the mail, but you're also cognizant of the number of pages that's required for that bid. If should you go over, the government will not. They will stop reviewing your bid. Again, follow instructions. That's the key thing from this area, is making sure that you're in compliant with the instruction section. Okay. As a review, the compliance matrix should provide a cross-reference table that tells the proposal evaluators where they can find responses to specific RFP requirements, okay? You should be listing the requirements that must be addressed in each proposal section. It also tracks proposal volumes, proposal sections, and responses, and corresponding page numbers in the proposal. This is where you can find the answer to Section A. This is where you can, and you keep going on and on until you answer the mail for each requirement. Okay, it keeps your entire proposal team on the same page regarding the compliance and ensures your proposal meets all requirements. Okay. So now let's dive into the executive summary section. This is the first volume of the proposal. Yasmin, does anybody have any questions about the introduction section of reviewing?
No, there's no questions yet. I just wanted to welcome everybody who's joined us since we started and let you know that you can type out your questions for Arlene in the chat box, and we will pause periodically to do Q&A. Thanks.
Great. So the executive summary is it's similar to an introduction if you were writing a report or something, okay? But this is telling the government who you are, how qualified you are, what you're gonna offer them in a nutshell. It's not a long section, it's just like an introduction. And it kind of, defines who you are and what you have to offer the government and who your key people are and what your main theme is and what you're offering. So normally in most companies, the section is written by a manager or the CEO, okay? Because it's a heartfelt response telling them why you want to do this work and how you've been successful in doing it throughout the company, years of experience, okay? So let's just look at a few things here that can be a part of your executive summary. Nothing's edged in stone, but as long as you're giving them an executive summary based on the requirements of that RFP, you should kind of let them know why you feel that they should select your company, right? Which is telling them how qualified you are and where you've done it before, briefly. How does the proposal align with the customer's evaluation criteria? Okay, so that's a good way to formulate that executive summary, and that you're telling them the pluses, okay? Why I'm a value add to your organization. How will the company benefit from what you proposed, okay? And what kind of return on investment can a customer anticipate? How will you your project, help the customer achieve their strategic goals? So, and when you're doing a proposal, hopefully you're going to be doing a little research, especially about the government agency and what their objectives are. If you have been researching that organization prior to the solicitation, you may have those answers. So I would like to, ask you to pay attention to that when you're deciding on RFPs to bid on, that you also have done some research on that agency. You can just go online and Google that agency and find out about the program, and kind of understand why that requirement even exists, you know. Um, so you can at least understand why they're doing it, so that it helps you formulate that solution to assist them once you get a contract, okay? And you have to look at how does your solution or your plans align with what the government asks for, okay? So if you've done that research and you kind of understand, is this a new requirement? Is it a contract rebid where there's an incumbent there? Incumbent means the person currently operating that particular contract. And you can see the kind of a history of why this is important. It's going. They're rebidding it again, okay? Because a lot of the work comes from rebidding, okay? And if you decide to take that on, that means you're gonna have to do even better than the company currently performing that work, okay? And so that's a way of evaluating whether you should bid it again. Can I unseat the incumbent contractor? And they're the ones with all the intellectual knowledge, right? But if you've done some of this before and you have new ideas that can enhance the way things are being done, then you should have a strong chance of coming in and really, hey, winning that bid and unseating the incumbent contractor. And many times the incumbent, they aren't eligible to rebid again, because after you reach a certain size standard in the government, you cannot bid on under that particular NAC code anymore. So more and more outside companies are going to come in to try to get that contract as their own. So then you need to look at your competition. Okay, so all of those things kind of play into your success in winning. Okay, and it's very good to look at how do your plans align with theirs. Especially during your proposal reviews, or when you sit down and have your meetings with your proposal writers, to make sure that you're considering that. Another question: how do the features of your proposal align with the challenge government faces? Okay, so with each proposal, there's a reason why it's out there. Okay, other than the fact that the government is tasked with putting a certain amount of work out for the commercial world to bid on. Okay. The executive summary should Introduce your company and proposed team if applicable. Summarize your company's specific experience in the areas being proposed. You need to convince the government that your company is the best choice to provide the services required by the RFP. Okay. Now, when you're selling services, you may be required to respond with technical response as well. And you need to, try to key in on these things, following the specific requirements in the instructions, okay, for that type of response. When we're talking about services, okay, it's normally required, okay, unless it's a IFB, invocation for bid, okay, then it may be just pricing that you're asking for in a cover letter. But when you get down to doing the real nitty gritty, okay, the larger bids, you're gonna have to write a technical response, and it will include these sections in general. Okay, so let's kind of review the actual proposal responses. Okay, this executive summary, again, is like the introduction, and this are the other areas. The actual second section, other than the executive summary, then you have your technical approach or tech response, okay? Now this will actually be your response to section C, the statement of work. All right. In the technical approach section, and you should start out again introducing your company and proposed team. Summarize your company's specific experience in the areas being proposed again. Convince the government that your company is the best choice. Okay, again, as a short introduction, because you've already done it in executive summary. All right, you can again summarize it quickly in a paragraph and keep going. So this section, again, is addressing the technical aspects that they're asking for that particular work you're going to be doing. Section C, statement of work or performance work statement in some cases, describes what the government agency wants you to do or supply. Outside of section B, supplies or services and price cost sections, most of your proposals will be responding to this section. So it's normally the largest section that you would be responding to. And, initially when you first start writing your first draft, a lot of people, throw in the kitchen sink, just to make sure they have all the information that they could use to formulate a good response to that requirement. Okay, but you have to keep in mind that each proposal has page limitations for each section. Sometimes they specifically tell you each section what you should include, or they'll just tell you in general, the technical proposal may not exceed 30 pages, okay? And you may start out having, 40 pages, but it's nothing wrong if you have enough time, and you should start be doing the proposal in enough time to go through that exercise, so you get enough stuff in there that you need to go back and review in your first proposal review, which people call the pink team, okay? And they kind of look at what you need and what you don't, it's better to have more than not enough, okay? It's important to list every item in the statement of work and state how you will deliver what is needed. So please concentrate on those areas and utilize that matrix or outline that you used and developed in the beginning before you start your writing to make sure you're on track as you're writing that technical response. Okay. So let's talk about some things that you're going to be having to respond to during the writing of the technical approach. one of the things we'll talk about is how will you support, like what, this is all about building your solution to what they're asking for. What capacity will it have? How will you track issues? What is your response time for problems? And how will you manage and escalate any issues that come up? Excuse me. This is important because, you want to show them, we have this. We're gonna be an advantage to your agency for having us be your contractor, and how you're supporting and the attention that you're going to pay to it is very important, so that uh, your company won't cause any additional issues to the government, but you're there to help them through this situation and manage the efforts that they have put out for bid. You can also talk about any specialized tools you're using to get this work accomplished, to manage your people that you may have on the government site. Okay. So how would the customer benefit from the tools that you will use? So if it's appropriate, depending on the type of bid you're doing, make sure that you talk about that, even if it's just software that your people are going to be using who are working on this contract. What tools will you use for development? If you're doing software development, what applications are you using to develop the systems for the government? What tools will you use for computer aided design, if that's what your proposal is asking for? What tools will you use for workflow? Which is a good one, because I think that's something that all contracts have, during that period of performance, you're going to have a workflow, even if they just have data entry operators, they're entering data. Well, how soon will you be getting work done? And what's the routine going to be? Things like that. Um, like I say, you know, you who are on the webinar, you have very wide variety of services and products that you're going to be supplying. So, I'm trying to generalize it, but I'm including these questions. And we also have handouts that will go with this, that are more in depth with these questions that you can consider. It kind of helps with the writer's block, because some people have writer's block, right? Um, what am I going to say now? So as just take this particular questions and kind of apply it to your proposed response, and it'll help you think about how to craft your response and include answers that the government has solicited. Another area you want to consider is standards and certifications. It's very, very important, as you start out in government contracting, you start growing, and as a small business, you need to look for the future, um, to include systems and certifications in your organization that the government are going to look for. Um, some of those may include ISO certification or a CMMI certification. And really that's about the quality control that you're gonna use in making sure that things are going well on the projects that you have, the contracts you have, okay? And I'm working with a couple of companies now who, they're doing their ISO certifications. And, it's a matter of having procedures in-house that are gonna present checks and balances to make sure that the corporate office is doing what they're supposed to do to support the contracts. And, in the different departments in your company, like HR, contract administration, finance and accounting, how are you going to pay your people? Well, they'll come in and evaluate how you're doing those things. And you get graded. You have a pass or fail. And they issue you your CMMI certification, and you get a diploma to put on your wall and all that. All that's good, but what that represents is that you're a quality company. So that's something as you grow, you may consider doing, or is recommended because, you know, the government wants to see that, all right? That you've done your due diligence to make sure that the work you do for them is of quality. All right. Does the staff being bid have any relevant certifications to cite when you're writing your proposals? You should brag about that. Tell them, especially the RFP mandates that you have and stuff, you have to have those certifications. But it's also good to incorporate some of these people with certifications that relate to what you're going to be providing, and it looks good. Okay, it's a value add for the government. Okay, will you use any specific application program innovations? Think about those things. Okay, it's just ideas, and hopefully these questions will help you think further about what else you could use to get it across to the government that you are a qualified firm, depending on, again, the areas expertise you're bidding on. All right. So certifications are important. In the RFP, in the personnel section, you'll see the government give you qualification requirements in a lot of cases. And just make sure when you're recruiting to put people into that proposal in key positions, and just generally working on the contract, that they have certifications that will complement that particular service area, and that will strengthen your company's past performance by putting these people on the contract who have these type of certifications. Like if you're in IT and you have A+ requirements for the help desk people who are going to be answering the phone for service areas in the government. It's certain certifications that's required for that, and that your company is involved with that and making sure that your employees stay up to date on their certifications and stuff like that. Okay, that looks good. And the next area is deliverables. Okay, so you have the qualified people. Let's talk about how am I going to provide the government with what they're asking for. Again, the answers to the requirements in section C. What deliverables will you produce? Sometimes that can be done in a table. In your own words, though, you need to be, talking about that and letting them know what that is. Actually, depending on the type of proposal you're bidding, there may be instances where the government kind of tell you what they want, and then on a firm fixed price contract type, most of the time you kind of have an idea of what they're looking for, or what the issue is that you need to respond to in your proposals. But in a firm fixed price, normally they don't tell you what kind of people to have. They just tell you what needs to be done. So you need to tell the government back, well, this is how we suggest this work can be done the best way. So you're going to be telling them what kinds of positions are needed to fulfill what they need done, right? So after reading that solicitation, you're going to formulate a staffing plan that's going to be responding to the needs of the government in the most efficient way. So what is the benefit to the customer for each deliverable? Okay. So with each deliverable, you're going to be talking about who's going to be responsible for supplying that service or product. Okay. And is the scope of each deliverable sufficiently defined? Okay, that's something you should think about when you're looking for questions to ask. If you feel that it's not defined adequately, ask the questions, okay? And, a lot of companies get shy of asking questions because they know that all the questions are going to be answered, but that their competitors are also going to be seeing the questions that they ask and may get a glimpse of what their solution is versus your competitor's solution. So, don't let that bother you. You know, um, hey, if you have a good solution, it's not going to be exactly the same, but you know, it is some advantages to the questions and answers coming back from the government and answering each and every question. They really don't put the company's name in the question and answers. They would just state the question and the answer, or if it's a repetitive question, they'll just restate it again and tell you where to see the answer. Um, a lot of times, competitors don't pay that any mind. And then some do, but and even you can benefit from that because by reading those questions and answers, because you want to make you it may even be an answer to a question that another company asks that can change your response, because you might be going down one road and then you look at questions that other companies ask that you never considered. They may put you on the right track, and the government answers their question, and wow, a light bulb goes off. And hey, I think we should tweak what we said over here, and not plagiarize. When you don't know what they're writing, but put in your own words. Maybe give them a little competition and switch over. So it's important to go over those questions. Don't ignore those amendments with questions being answered. Okay, it can help your response. Um, are the completion points for each deliverable clear? Okay, so think about that. You're talking about providing services from start to finish. Okay, and especially if each deliverable has a different delivery date. You can use charts and graphs to show how you're going to get there. Because again, page limitations matter, and they cut down on page limits. Then if you cut down and get your point across, you may use those things to help tell your story about your solutions. Okay. There are times when you need to provide samples of your deliverables. Um, a lot of proposals that um, I've done, the RFP requires you to respond to a mock situation, or they call it a sample task or something that you perform during the performance of the contract, and they want to see how you would handle that. Okay, so you know, again, that that means that the powers to be, the key people or your company officials are going to come together and provide that sample. And you're better off if it's something you really have done before, or if you're hiring people who've done it, and they can come together and help craft that response and make that sample solution um, a quality one and answers the mail. Okay, the next section is the management plan. But before I go in, any questions on the technical part?
Hi, Arlene. Yes, let's have a look and see. Somebody asked, are there any examples of successful proposals available anywhere for us to review?
Yes, but I tend not to give you that. I mean, I'm giving you the format of how it goes, but the actual solutions, I would not want to show you. And then again, it would have to be sanitized because most of the ones I have are products that was for other clients of mine. So, you know, here is, I'm presenting the outline of how it should be crafted. And if you are in doubt about anything, again, ask the question to the government, or you can hire consultants that may come in and evaluate your bid to help you get on the right track. But I don't think it's a disadvantage to give you a sample proposal because each RFP is different and the responses are all different. So if I say this is a response, and then you may tend to want to do the same thing, which may not be identical to the solicitation you're responding to, okay? So what I'm providing today is an outline of the sections you need to follow, and that in conjunction with the requirements you're responding to from the RFP that should be in the same order of what I'm showing you today should be sufficient enough. But again, if you're in doubt or need clarification, take your questions to the government, okay? But, again, follow those instructions, okay?
Okay, thanks. Next question is, you had mentioned earlier about ROI. She says, the question is, I understand what ROI is, but I'm wondering how to express it, especially for a service like training.
Okay. Return on investment, ROI, is that what she's saying?
Yes.
Okay. Well, in training, I think it's mainly making sure that your responses answers, again, what the government's asking for. Making sure you can demonstrate that you've done it before in your past performance. And again, if you're like doing training and you're developing the training responses from scratch, or if it's off the shelf software you're providing, then you need to make sure you define that clearly, ask the government asks for it, okay? And give them a good price, because in the end, the technical proposal has to be good before they consider your pricing. But again, the government's always looking for the most advantageous price, okay? Meaning the lowest bidder. So, again, that's how this game is played. You're going to see different types of proposals come out. Sometimes you might even say lowest price technically acceptable, where they look at the lowest price first and then look at the best proposal technically that was submitted. You want to make sure that you're covering both areas, but you always read that solicitation and find out how they're going to evaluate. If they're looking for a best value, then price is not something you should concentrate on, but you should concentrate on giving them the best training program that they're asking for, okay? And if that may cost a little more, then, just make sure you're reasonable, because you want to make sure the other companies that are bidding it, that you can surpass them and give them a little more quality or something that you can incorporate in your indirectly that's going to help benefit them more, because it's always going to be competition in this game. And so that's something you should always think about. But, think about ideas. And sometimes, when we are doing proposals or when I work with my clients, we sit around the table and think about no cost value adds that we could provide when we respond to proposals. Okay. And actually, I do training programs in my company. And, we kind of look at the type of training we're providing and how we're going to provide it and how we can enhance that. So do a little bit of brainstorming and see how you can, provide something. What I like to call sometimes is get a niche for of different areas that you provide and keep updating it as you grow. Because again, competition is going to keep growing, okay? And you have to be competitive in this field. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, she said yes. So we'll do one more question and then we'll continue. So the question is, are proposals needed for SDVOSB set-asides? And this person is asking particularly for IT and cyber security.
Okay, well, generally, the government procures almost everything, okay? And in that particular airfield, I'm sure that you said SBIR, the research.
SDVOSB, so service disabled veteran own, I believe.
Oh, yeah, that's what she means. Okay, sure, yes. That's set asides are, again, certifications that you can get once you start doing business with the government, from the various set aside areas. Okay, and the Veterans Department, it's one of them. They have service disabled and regular veteran owned certifications that you can get certified for. And so those set asides are put out by the Veteran Administration, you know, I can't talk this morning, I'm sorry, specifically to attract veteran-owned companies to be the prime, okay? And that doesn't preclude you from teaming with other companies who are not veteran-owned, as long as the prime contractor is veteran-owned. And that goes for any set-aside program that you become a part of and decide to bid on their requirements, okay?
Okay, thank you. We'll pause again later on for more Q&A.
Yes, we will. Okay, so let's talk about the second section section of the RFP response for proposal. It's the management plan. So you've previously told them what you're going to do. Now you're going to tell the government how you're going to manage that whole process. Because that's one reason, the biggest reason they do this. They put it out for rebid, for bid, for contractors to respond. Because the government doesn't have to have the hassle of managing that day-to-day grind. The contractor has that responsibility. So let's take a look at that. Okay. So the management plan, again, is how you manage that project or contract you are working on. You've been, awarded. So let's talk about a little bit what's included in that. A clearly defined project manager or PM, program manager or project manager, and task order, TO, project manager, relationship and responsibilities. So with each contract, you're gonna have a manager or some kind of lead person that's heading that on site or at your company's site or your company's facilities, okay? You need to let government know that you understand what that responsibility is and how it's going to be handled on that particular contract. You should show resources that the corporate office is going to provide, like human resource services that are going to support the personnel that are on that particular contract. Okay. This process is needed to meet project goals and quickly adapt to project contingencies. Human resources is very, very much needed in each organization because as you are doing proposals, you're constantly going to need people available to be placed on those contracts. So they're going to be doing recruitment. And once you win the contract, the HR person or department is going to be providing and managing the benefits for those employees, because it's very important to hire and retain the people that you're hiring at a minimum over the life of that contract, and kind of keep your project from having a revolving door, new people coming in and out. You want to be stabilized so that you can attract the people you need and keep them, okay, throughout the duration of that work. Again, you're going to address quality assurance. This process that accurately tracks and reports contract performance, but also supports the implementation of process improvements. Okay. QA is important. Every organization needs it. Okay, regardless of what you're selling or what you're doing, because you don't want to be sloppy with putting not putting procedures in place, and people not knowing what to do at the right times. And if you're people on the government site, they need to know, what they should be doing and be able to check it against these quality assurance procedures that you're going to put in place. And again, I talked earlier about the CMMI certifications and the ISO and all of that. That's another balance of things. That's why the government appreciates those certifications, because it helps verify that you're a quality company and you have processes in place that are going to support that. It makes managing that contract easier, and you can head off challenges before they become problems. Okay. You should also show the government that you have a communication strategy, and that it shows the government that you understand the communication lines between the government, between the contractor, and your employees and staff. And let's say you do have a subcontractor. Well, how am I going to deal with that subcontractor? Okay. And, this can be really put into a charter graph. It's called an organization chart that usually goes in the management plan. It kind of shows the government you understand this whole system and how it's going to be work, how you're going to manage, and how you're going to communicate with the government. And if you have a project manager or program manager, how they're interact with the government through the contract officer representative and the contracting officer, and then kind of show downline who your other workers are on that particular contract, and especially the key personnel. Identify those people in their roles. Okay. So communication strategy is another thing that you really should identify. Keep in mind that subcontractors are there to complement your staff, and so they will be represented as staff members. Okay. And that's transparent to the government. Okay. When you're writing your proposal, you need to identify who your subcontractors are, and the individuals that will be subcontracted, or labor categories, or however, or what function they'll have in supporting that contract. Make sure that's clearly identified, and, subcontractors should be properly managed, and the government need to understand that you are on top of that. Keep in mind that any subcontractors you bring on can be your competitors on the next bid. So make sure that confidentiality is addressed between the people working on your contract from the other subcontractor companies, and that they understand that they're going to take direction from the managers from your company. Okay. How to reduce risk. Okay, in each type of contract, there's some risk that you're taking. Okay, and I mentioned firm fixed price contracts. And the government, the federal government, they issue a lot of firm fixed price contracts, including the state of Maryland. And in these type contracts, the risk is on the contractor. Okay, because usually you're getting paid a lump sum to provide services, and you have to make sure that your procedures and everything is included. Well, all the requirements that are needed to fulfill this requirements included in your pricing. And the issue is that the contractor is taking on this kind of risk that I am charging you X amount of dollars to do this particular contract, and I can't come back to you and ask you to change it because I left out a cost item, or I didn't consider a certain function and how much that would cost and what it was needed for it. Unless this can only be changed by the government for a firm fixed price. Okay. So make sure the type of contract, that causes you the most risk. Again, that's the firm fixed price. And on the other hand, in the opposite direction, the cost plus fixed fee type contracts, where the government reimburses you for all expenses that are acquired during the performance of that contract. And so the government takes most of the risks in those cases. And you rarely see those now, but in the DoD area and some other agencies, research and development and stuff like that, software development, you'll see the cost plus fixed fee type contracts. So, that way you can identify up front, do I want to take this risk and go after this contract? And, evaluate how large that risk is, what that means. And so it also means you need good managers who are going to make sure that you can manage and perform this contract adequately and come out with an actual, uh, hey, profit. Okay. You don't want to not bid and include all the costs and your profit and not make money on the work you're doing, because that's what this is all about, you making money. Okay. So risk and cost control is very important. That's something that your managers and supervisors are going to be managing day to day. So you need to show the government that, yeah, we've got this and we're monitoring and we're making sure that we give you quality service above budget, not above, but below. Okay. Excuse me, below budget or at budget. What I predicted was true. We came in even. Okay. And you get your profit that you need. These are things that management have to consider. Even when hiring people, when you do your proposals, you're hiring people and you're finding out the salaries they require, all that. You can't just accept people's salary. You got to make sure they're within the budget that you're setting forth to win. Okay. So when you're doing your pricing and you're doing your proposal response, your pricing should mirror what you're proposing. So the staff cost and all of that is very, very important. So it's something you need to manage, okay, to make sure you stay within budget on a monthly basis, and that's why during the performance of the contract, the managers meet with the government and they want to know how many hours have you burned this much, meaning how many hours did your staff work and what that means to the project progress and how much funding you've spent. And, on time and material type contracts where they get paid by the hour instead of the firm fixed price, then it's more flexible for the government because it's easier for the contractor to come back and say, hey, we're running out of money. We need some more funding, and, and that's true of every contract too, even firm fixed price, but it's more important in time and material area. So if something comes up that needs to be adjusted, if the government can provide that extra funding, they need to be alerted. And it should be managed by the project manager on a monthly basis again. Okay. Let's go right into the human resources section. When submitting resumes, like I mentioned earlier, HR is a part of that team of people, or team of support that's going to be helping you keep your employees happy. Okay. And you need to find those people. But in responding to the proposal, you at a minimum are going to be asked to provide resumes of key people. And sometimes they may even ask that they want resumes of all the people you're going to assign to this particular response. So you need to provide all required resumes as instructed by the RFP Section L. Reformat all resumes using a standard template, okay? Please don't take resumes off the street, meaning people who just respond to ads and they send you resumes to your company. You have to reformat them all in the same format, okay? And, be consistent with that. And do not include any personal information or contact information on those individuals in this format that you're doing. There are times when the government will tell you how they want the resumes formatted and what should be included, but not all the time. So your company should develop a standard that includes all the important areas and that you're within the page limitation for each resume. Okay. So, you may even not red team your resumes to make sure that you're answering the mail, that you're pulling all the information from the original resume into the reformatted one that is pertinent to that particular bid you're doing. Okay. The government doesn't want to see, that person worked for Pizza Hut 5 years and you're bidding on an IT requirement. Just concentrate on the relevant experience and answer any questions that they may have or need to be privy to for that particular individual's resume. Ensure that all proposed candidates meet the labor description requirements. Okay. On a time and materials type contract, they're going to tell you those labor category descriptions and requirements that the government is seeking. They should match. Okay. On a firm fixed price contract, you're suggesting to the government the types of labor categories that need to be fulfilled. So make sure you also tell them the function areas of what that particular labor category is going to be responsible for the performance of that contract. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, that's very important that they understand the caliber of people that you're providing that are going to be supporting their requirement. And recruitment is important for proposal development. Okay. In fact, that's how I got into doing proposals, was reformatting resumes as the director of HR in one of my companies I supported. And later, which led to me doing actual proposals, being a part of the proposal team. So I know how important resumes help you win. You have to be able to attract and retain those individuals. And hopefully that retention is throughout the life of the contract. And you have to be on your toes about recruiting people, making sure that should people leave the company on their own from time to time, you have replacements in place quickly and it doesn't interrupt the flow of work for the government. Okay. Okay. This is not particularly last, but it's past performance. That's another area that you're going to look at prior to even taking this journey on responding to this particular proposal requirement. Because you need to demonstrate to the government that you have experience in the areas that you're bidding. Okay. Experience can mean you, the owner or operator of the company, your employees, together with your employees, have that knowledge and expertise in the areas you're bidding on. Very important. So let's talk about that for a minute. Make sure your company references are valid. Okay, so you have to prove to the government, have people to substantiate that, yes, yeah, this company, ABC company, worked with me on this particular project and they did for so many years. Okay. And so that's what I mean. You need to provide all necessary contact information, and that, that's important, that you don't burn bridges as you do work with other companies, and that you can always go back and get them to vouch for your work and how well you did it. Okay. The government will tell you in the RFP section L, again on the instructions, how many past performance citations you need in your response. And that's the biggest reason why people find subcontractors to go into a particular proposal or go after a contract with them as a sub, is to fulfill that. You need a subcontractor to fulfill a certain role that you don't have within your company already, and that the sub has expertise in that area. Okay. So the subcontractor can come in and fulfill a role that will provide that full service area for what the government has been asking for. So you need to provide a complete summary of related past performance and that's relative to the RFP. So you can look at it, in the RFP, they may say we need, sometimes I've seen up to 5 references, okay? And you have to really define that in your proposal and tell them exactly how you perform that work and provide the contact people to substantiate that. And then if you use any subcontractors, they need to be able to verify that as well. It's just like you go out and you vet people that you're going to work for your company. You get references on them and you call the people and you verify that, what they're saying is true. It's important that you do that, or you find some way to make sure that this company didn't make up that expertise, that is really valid. And then when the government contacts the people, they can reach the people and, get confirmation that what you wrote in your proposal is true and valid. Okay. So that's another function that you can have an individual in your company, handle. In my role as contract administrator, many times that's what I would handle, contacting our current contract people, letting them know that they will get contacted by the government because we're bidding on a certain RFP, and that to look out for the call, or that they would respond to any inquiries that might come to them about our performance. And, and it's important. And as you do business with the government, make sure that, that's, that's one reason that you want to do a good job too, because that's the lifeblood of your company. The references that you're going to get from the people you served in the past. And even in your, everyday jobs, the government will accept your work history, and you need to stay in contact with somebody who can verify that as you, take your venture into government contracting. You want to have a live person they can call or email or visit, or however they do their reference checking, to vouch for your past performance. And you want to make that be as positive as possible. Okay. There are times when the government will also include in the RFP package a questionnaire that they want your references to utilize when they're doing their providing the responses to the government. So they may, you will have to write about it in a section, but you'll also have to contact your references and let them know that there's a questionnaire you need them to complete, okay? And that, either they will have in the RFP where the particular references are supposed to return those past performance citations, okay? Or questionnaires. And you make sure that you have somebody internally who's kind of tracking that to make sure that your references get in, because the due date for the references are sometimes the deadline is the same as when the proposal is due, but that's not always true. Sometimes the past performance is due to the contracting department prior to the actual proposal being submitted. So again, Section L will provide all that information, and you have to make sure that, again, somebody is in charge of checking up with your reference people to see if they have had the time, because keep in mind, these are past performance or current. So, and each entity has their own busy day, and fitting your requirement in is something extra. So do what you can to make sure you stay on top of that. It could make or break your being awarded a contract. Again, the government's going to look at the evaluation criteria that they're going to use to grade you, and in Section M, it'll tell you the points for each section, including past performance. You're going to lose points if you don't get those past performance questions answered to the right officials from the agency you're bidding from. So again, that's another thing to manage while you're doing your proposal writing. Now, normally the past performance is like the last section of the technical volume that you're proposing. And so, I mentioned reviews earlier, that you need to factor in reviewing your proposal while you're putting that proposal together to be submitted to the government. So, it's important. And when you decide I'm going to bid on this thing, you need to factor in all of these factors. You got to have time for review. Do not start a proposal if you don't have time to review it. Okay. That's just imperative. Okay. And normally at a minimum, we schedule three sessions to review and recover and make the proposal better and better until you have the perfect proposal in your mind, okay? Or that you've answered all the mail. You feel satisfied that you have a winning proposal to go out the door to your customers, okay? So let's look at that process right quick. Always review all proposal volumes prior to submission. So you may, at a minimum, have 3 formal proposal review sessions. And the third most important thing is pick the right people for your proposal review team. That means you need to obtain people within your organization or consultants who have expertise in the area you're bidding to review your document for you. It may cost you something. You may have to pay some people to come in. But if you have a team of people in-house that can do it, I suggest you do that. Have them sit in and read over what all the writers have produced and provide their comments and suggestions to make that proposal better, or any red flags that you have as you're putting that proposal together. The proposal team itself, would be doing the writing, but you may want to find other people who didn't do the writing to review, okay? Because sometimes people who write, miss things when they're reviewing because they're too familiar with the information, okay? And you get a better view of an outside person looking at that with the expertise to determine, oh, you're missing this step. Oh, you did this, but it's vague. Let's embellish this area. Give you some good ideas on how to make that proposal stronger. And that's what you're looking for in this review. In each step, it should be better and better, okay? And that the reviews are scheduled in such a time that you're going to complete them way before the due date, or you're not doing that review the day the proposals due, okay? Because that's add stress that's going to cause you to be too hurried and probably miss more information that needs to be corrected than you want to. So make sure that you have time to plan it, that whoever's working with you to coordinate that proposal, make sure it gets out of the door in a compliant manner, has factored in these review times, and that all of the proposal writers and team are part of that review when they get to go over together as a group and discuss ways you can make sure that your proposal is a winning solution, okay? So there's a part 2 to this class that I talk more about the proposal team, so I hope you join us for that. But these are all considerations that you have to think about during this whole proposal development phase of your company or business development. Now, I said at a minimum, you're going to be doing what we call the first review was a pink review. And generally, that's just kind of looking at what we have gathered to build this proposal. Are there any holes missing? And that's usually when you really company decides, wow, we're missing um, a good response to this area. Do we have the expertise in-house? Do I have to go outside? Do I need another subcontractor to bring that um, expertise to the company for the fulfillment of this proposal? So, um, like I said in the beginning, sometimes you kind of throw everything but the kitchen sink in there, because you want to make sure you everything that you have, you got it there so that it can be evaluated to see if that's enough to answer the requirements of that particular proposal. So the pink team is the first review. So you have that meeting and everybody talking over and they go back and uh, fill in any gaps that they feel they had originally, um, kind of look at things that they can include to make the proposal better, stuff like that. Then the next review will be the red review. And that's where you take, it started out with the red ink pen. Yeah, like going and reading the document and kind of outlining in red what needs to be changed and, you know, kind of look at again what we've accomplished since the pink team. And this is where you kind of get to the nitty gritty because the next review will be the final one. And you want to make sure that, again, nothing's missing. You've answered everything on your compliance matrix that needs to be answered. But if not, you still have time to change it, okay? Or you identify any other missing holes that really have to be added that you need to scramble and get together before this proposal is due. So you again have a meeting with the powers to be, your proposal team, and kind of look at where you are, and hopefully all the information's there, and you're just ready for the the formatting, final formatting, make sure all the page limitations are adhered to, because that's important. Remember I said earlier, if you have too many pages, then what the government has asked for, that's grounds to have your proposal, dismissed. They'll stop reading, okay? So the document is massaged again and all of the final edits are made, and then you meet together for the goal review, which is the final review. Again, this is the minimum, as companies grow and get, depending on the different volumes, and again, the type of services you're providing, there are other colors that you can call that, that uh, you need to review as well. Um, Larger companies probably have different colors. I know I worked with Lockheed Martin for a while, and they had, wow, every kind of color. I mean, they had a black review, a green review. Okay, and at one time I was in charge of reviewing graphics. Okay, that go into the proposal, and that had its own color. So, you know, for smaller companies, I think the pink and the red and the gold would suffice, but just make sure you do it. I mean, at any rate, you gotta have these reviews because you want to make sure what you're putting out is looking good, is representing your company well, because, you as you go on your journey in federal contracting, you know, these government people remember your company name, and you don't want to be known for a sloppy proposal. Okay, make sure that all your formatting is right, and that the margins are right, because all of these things are told in that section L, how they want that proposal submitted. And following instruction is one of the biggest things that can uh, hurt you or help you, okay, during this process, is following instructions and adhering to that section L section is it. Excuse me, sorry. But at the goal review, it's the final review before you submit. So again, that's that last sanity check that you're gonna go through, just again to make sure that all requirements are met, page limitations right, the numbering of the pages are right, and that you have the volumes, because each proposal is broken into volumes. Normally the basic ones have a technical and a cost. Well, there are some proposals that may have a technical for one volume, or they can break each section into separate volumes. Okay. So you want to make sure that all of that is done according to instructions. So, you know, really, like I say, I couldn't say it simpler. The main thing is following instructions. And if you've done your due diligence and you've asked all the questions you could, you got clarification from the government, and you're incorporating all of the changes that have been made since that solicitation was issued and into your final proposal, and that it's been checked thoroughly, then you have a really good chance of being considered for award. Um, the only thing you have to worry about is the other companies who come out as good as you, okay? And then it may come to a pricing war, but you should always strive for that, to make sure that you have the best quality proposals. So you submitted your proposal and the government has reviewed, okay? Now this may happen, but sometimes, the government, there is a FAR regulation that they'll have in that clause section of your RFP that states that, we're just going to award this project, this proposal. We're not going to come back and ask for any revisions, okay? But there are some set-asides, like the 8A program or the Veterans Administration, or whoever, that will allow revisions, okay? Where if you have a good proposal, let's say your price is excellent and your proposal will have a minimum amount of deficiencies, they'll come back and ask you to take another look at your bid, okay? And so they call this request for proposal revisions. Final proposal revisions are your last chance to correct weaknesses and deficiencies before source selection. You are prepared when you know more about your customer's desires than at any previous time, okay? So they will tell you then where they feel a section is deficient, and you'll have a limited time to respond so that they can get that proposal awarded, or that contract awarded, to the winning bidder. So, you're in a good place if you come back and ask for a proposal revision, okay? Because that means, wow, I'm kind of at the top. It's got a few things to correct, and if I'm, but keep in mind that you're not alone at the top. There's some other companies there. You might get the 3 lowest bidders with the quality proposal who are competing on a price basis. So again, you have to think about, how am I gonna pull this off and win this bid, okay? So, but it's all interesting, and it can be very rewarding when you win. I can remember jumping up and down in the hallway because we won a proposal, okay? So again, it's the lifeblood of your company, and it's very important to keep yourself going. You can't win one proposal and stop, because each proposal has its limitations. It'll tell you the period of performance. So, and believe me, the other new contractors will be out there looking how to unseat you and bid for that proposal when it's come up for rebid again. So you got to make sure that you keep your information proprietary, and that close to you. And again, as if you win that contract, you have that intellectual knowledge that you want to make sure it stays in-house, that it's not something that gets out and other companies can be privy to when they And if people, ask to see a copy of your proposal through the Freedom of Information Act, that you're not giving out your trade secrets or anything like that. When we're responding to proposals, the government will ask you to include a statement on each page of your contract that states that your information is proprietary. Okay. Sometimes they give you the exact language to use on the bottom of your pages. Okay. And that's especially true of pricing too, but in technical world, yes, you do need to make sure you state that. And that if they ask you to review your proposal that you submitted for any contracts you've won and sanitize it so that it precludes your competition from knowing your trade secrets, please listen to that, because that's a way you can tell all and give someone else your contract. Okay. So again, that was one role that I've performed as a contract administrator, do the sanitizing of any what we call FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests that come through from the government. So it's very important, again, to manage that. So let's talk about things you consider when you're done and you're delivering and coming down to the wire with submitting your proposal. Okay, make sure you have read your packaging and labeling instructions that you may see either in section A or L, but it's mostly always in L. Backup copies, if you have to submit hard copies, okay. It's not really asked for hard copies all the time now these days, but back in the day when I first started out in proposal writing, everything was hard copy because we didn't have all the technology we have now. But now mostly bids are submitted, electronically. And now since COVID, that it stopped a lot of that hard copy submissions. I know with the state of Maryland, a lot of programs are still being submitted with paper, okay, because a lot of especially the IFBs, the information for bids, they have bid openings where you can physically go there and learn whether you won that bid that day, okay. But most of the time, if it's a technical proposal involved, there's a lapse in time before you get awarded because they have to take the time to thoroughly review all responses. So, just think about that. Make sure you maintain copies in-house anyway, electronically, to use as boilerplate for future bids. And that will help you use that document again and tweak it to the new RFPs on an in-house basis, okay? Look at the way, again, they're going to tell you in section A how they want it delivered. If it's any manual copies you have to submit, then they'll tell you, they'll tell you the date and time that the responses are due. And you should really try to get that done a day ahead of time, I suggest. You don't want to be the last minute submitting bids, even electronically, the internet's good and all that stuff. But if the government has certain databases they use to where they retrieve your proposal submissions. And let's say something's due at noon and you're just trying to submit at 5 minutes to 12, it could be hundreds of other companies responding and everybody's trying to submit into the same system. It's very probable that somebody's proposal is going to get kicked out. And that has happened to me, not me directly, but companies that I've worked with. When the submission time came, we were like last minute trying to get it in, and our technical got in, but the cost proposal got kicked out. Therefore, we weren't considered for bid. And you don't want to have those situations get set up where you're submitting's too late and you don't get all your documents submitted on time, or you don't understand the system that you're using to submit your proposal in. All right, so make sure that's investigated in advance and that you're familiar with the procedures for uploading documents into their databases, and that you can do so in a timely manner. But the best thing is to have that proposal done at least the day before or earlier, and it's submitted early, or at least earlier than the same day of the proposal. I'm just saying, just do the best you can, you know. But if you ever do it and miss a proposal submission, I trust that you won't do it again, okay? Because you're gonna put those procedures in place, right? So just make sure that you know, again, in submitting, that you're doing what you have to do. Access and handling. So you have to think about if it's a manual submission you have to do, which is rare, that it goes out of your office in time to get to the location where it's submitted in time. Be it whether you're mailing it or shipping it or having a personal delivery person take it, okay? Keep in mind that if you're a security cleared company and it's a classified response you're doing, that you may be subject to special conditions for submitting that proposal. And so make sure all of that's taken care of. Do you need a courier, or what else do I need, right, outside of electronic submissions? So again, these are things that you can add to your matrix, your compliance matrix, for you to double check, okay? And as things change and new procedures come in place, update your matrix to include those things that you need to consider before proposal goes out the door or is submitted, okay? Follow a strict proposal development timeline. So in the beginning, whoever's helping you coordinate your proposal process, they're going to keep you on target, from the team up meetings that you're going to be doing throughout the proposal process to the due date, okay? So that's timeline is important. You want to make sure that you're done in time to submit on time. Manage your proposal team so everyone stays on deadline. That's that coordinator, okay? And hopefully there's not a person that's also writing. It's just a person helping the writers stay on point, okay? Ensure your proposal volumes follow all Section L instructions, okay? So you submitted and you've won. And even if you don't win, you need to organize and maintain your proposal boilerplate information, okay? Now, this is going to be, with each proposal you do, if you don't win, make sure you contact the government and ask for a debriefing, where they would give you an overview of why you weren't selected, okay? That's important, because you need to learn from each proposal that was rejected, Hopefully you might find out that, hey, you had a good proposal, but you lost on price. So that means you need to look at how you're pricing and make sure that your proposal marries the price proposal, and that all the costs are incurred and you're doing the best you can to submit a proposal that's compliant and the price is good, that you can live with and that the government will accept, okay? So again, all of these proposals, once you get that debriefing, can start up your proposal library internally that you can use to help build other similar proposals in the future, okay? So that's the kind of information you can use that can help you put out faster proposals. Already having sections written that's been sanitized, meaning so that that boilerplate is can be easily used for the next proposal. Take out the agency names that you proposed previously and just make it generic so that the new information can be inputted in, and that boilerplate is then tailored to the section L section of any future projects that you're going to be bidding on. Okay. So it's important, I know, when I answered earlier about providing a template, I think that's something that you need to grow to internally in your company. Okay. And not really get thrown off by how other people respond. Okay. So the template is the different section names, and you develop through your expertise your solutions that can be tailored for your own company's boilerplate. Okay. So keep that in mind. And after everything's submitted, you can relax until the next proposal comes up. Okay. So we're coming to the end of the proposal. And last but not least, after you've developed all this database of proposals you've done, make sure that everything's archived, that you meet back with your proposal team to kind of discuss the process. Okay. If you don't have time after each proposal, at least plan to meet at some point within the next 2 weeks after you submit it. And, or you want to, wait until you find out whether you've won or not, you can do that. But you need to always be focused on process improvement. And so, again, you should have the proposal manager or business development sections. Make sure that the archiving and the proposals is somewhere where individuals who are in your business development department or proposal team can actually access the information easily to be reused. And it includes all of these things, final proposals should be filed away electronically on your SharePoint drive or in other areas that you may have set up to keep documents. Capture plans, team information, any research and the information you have on various agencies should be, filed away so that everybody can get that information when they need it in for future bids. Pricing may be kept separate from the technical area, but it shouldn't include any estimates and stuff like that. Usually CFOs or accounting helps out with pricing, so they may keep certain documents, or the contract administrator. Any graphics that you use from time to time that you may be able to massage and use again, make sure that's readily available to be used again or tweaked. Any mock-ups that will help you. And then, this starts your whole proposal process. I know I get this from a lot of subcontractors I work with that, they really want to know about proposal writing, because usually they only see the portion that they're subcontracted to perform in the proposal write-up. So, but again, in those subcontractor prime relationships, you have to understand that, again, you, the sub, can become a competitor to the prime contractor you're supporting at any time. So there are certain data you want to make sure that you keep in your company, as the prime contractor. So it's not a good idea to sometimes have the sub review your whole proposal. Okay. They will be there for the debriefing on the areas that they wrote to, so that they can make their sections in compliance with your proposal submission. Okay, but for the sub, they're going, wow, I've never seen a whole proposal, a finished product. Well, Once you get in the game, you'll learn. But hopefully taking classes like this will help you be more on point when you do respond. So make sure you keep this information handy if you haven't did before, and kind of utilize this and when you're pulling your team together and embark upon responding to an RFP. Okay. Well, we're here at question and answer period.
Thank you,
Anybody have-
Arlene. That was great as usual. So yeah, we've got 10 minutes left. So if there are any questions you would like to ask Arlene regarding this class, please type them out now. Or if you would like her to go over anything she addressed earlier in the presentation. And while we're waiting for that, I had some questions that I could answer, which is asking about the next class, which is a proposal writing level 2. I have posted the link in the chat, so you can go ahead and register for that one. And yes, I will be sending out a copy of the presentation and the replay link. So you will be getting that shortly. So if you have any questions, now's the time to ask. Anyone? No? Well, it doesn't look like any questions are coming up. So I'd like to thank Arlene for doing this presentation, and thank you all for participating today. Don't forget, your Apex Accelerator counselor is here to assist you. So do get in touch with them to schedule a session. And we hope to see you again at a future Maryland Apex Accelerator event. Thank you, Arlene. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.